I have had seasons in my life, young as I am, where I needed to just be hyper focused on delivering something. At college, it was the papers, the coursework. Today, it is with client reports and business acquisition. Most people have those times and those moments whereby you need to focus on something and get it done, when you need to deliver, when you need to work harder than you usually do. In these moments, most of us will look for motivation to keep going because usually it is a very hard time for you. You are trying to balance all these things, and most people have these modes within which they go into to get things done. People refer to them as beast mode, monk mode, whatever kind of sort of thing you have, but it all rotates around this whole thing of grit that I'm going to be talking about. I have recently been in some sort of season like that in my life, and one of the things I realize is that during these times, you tend to doubt if it is all worth it. The sacrifice, the sort of struggle, the long nights, the hard decisions, and you start to sort of question yourself and doubt. But as I was going through this whole thing, I just decided to do some digging on grit and when to know when to have grit and fight that voice in your head, or on the other side, when to know when to give up. Because sometimes we are in these seasons when we are really hyper focused on getting something done that we focus on the wrong project, or you could easily give up on that one project that could easily get you to that point in life that you want. So in this episode, I wanted to talk about grit, when to use it, when not to use it. So please stick around until the end. Let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to the 5 to 9 Job podcast. I'm your host, Raymond, and today's topic is one we romanticize a lot but rarely understand deeply, and that is grit. So, today we are going to be talking about what grit actually is, how to build it, when to use it, and then when you actually shouldn't use it. So, first things first, what is grit? Grit is this combination of passion and perseverance for long term goals. And in simple terms, it's staying locked in when motivation fades. It's showing up when results are still months away, or when you clearly can't see the path ahead. It's what keeps you in the gym, for example, after 3 months of no visible abs. For those of us that have tried to do gym, not everything, like, not all the results come in one day, in 2 weeks, in 1 month. No, some results literally take you a year to build and things like that. Anyway, psychologist Angela Duckworth defines grit as sustained passion and perseverance, especially for long-term goals. And that is literally where I picked the whole definition I started with: passion and perseverance for not just short-term, mid-term, but long-term goals. So the distinction here is that it's not about banking on talent, it's not luck, it's not vibes, it's about staying in the game no matter what. That's great. Perseverance and then passion. And we have so many examples of this. Think about any great athlete that you admire, that you watch. They have all definitely used grit to get to where they are. But maybe one I know you definitely have heard of is the Thomas Edison story of the 1000 failed experiments and everything. I don't actually know if it was exactly 1000 failed experiments and then he finally got it, but it took him over 1,000 tries to invent light bulb, so it is said. Or Serena Williams, years of injury, criticisms, comebacks, that is all great. Society is littered with all these stories of guys who have trained for decades before they came out and won all these things or did all these amazing things. These people did not just hustle, they literally endured, and that is the core essence of what grit is: sustained focus, passion, and perseverance for long term goals. Serena Williams didn't just play for 5 years. She has played for a span of over 20 years. You get it? Uh, Thomas Edison, his invention right now powers most of the homes in the world simply because of grit, failing and keeping at it. So now that we know what it is and how it has shaped people's success, how do you build grit? Within my search for answers, I found 5 steps that were not just easy for me because, let's be sincere, I am doing this research because I'm lazy, but they also resonated with me and I hope they will do the same for you. So, number one was clarity of purpose. If you don't care deeply about what you are doing or what you intend to do or what you are thinking of doing or have done, you won't stick with it. So start with why, like Simon Sinek says, start with why. Why does this matter to you? Have that core clarity that I want to do this because I want to help this person. I'm doing this because of me, or I am doing this because I want to get rich. It's not bad to want to get rich. So just have that clarity of purpose. Number two is the daily discipline. You see, the one thing about grit is that it needs to be repeated over a sustained period of time. Grit isn't about this heroic effort of once a year, once a month, I have a day where I go all out. No, it is this sort of boring everyday routine, the unsexy consistency, the reps, the late nights, the early mornings, the iterations that you have to do. That is the daily discipline that grit is actually about. So it's not so much this whole I have 1 year whereby I focus or 1 month whereby I do this. No, it is sustained over a long period of time, and that is grit. And then number three is embrace discomfort. This one is a hard one even for me, but grit, for anyone that has been growing or for anyone that has challenged themselves or wants to keep winning, you know that grit grows in the struggle, in the uncomfortable zone. So simply welcome that resistance, not just for the results, but because it is going to help you to sort of see where your limits are and then you can better mark or hit your mark. In other words, number two is learn to rest and not to quit. And I want to make this distinction because I love this point simply because I had never articulated it this well. There is a very big difference between quitting something and then taking a rest. And the whole hustle porn culture has made it so that it is bad for you to rest. But I don't think it is bad for you to rest. It is bad for you to quit on something that you have so much passion for. But taking a rest once in a while is actually healthy for you. And that's where the balance comes. So sometimes grit means taking a break so you can come back even stronger, that you can be more balanced, you can feel fresh, and you can go after it with new energy. And then number five, and lastly, is reflection. Always ask yourself, what am I learning? Where am I going? Where am I growing? Reflect on that whole journey because that reflection is going to fuel your grit. It is going to keep on reinforcing your why and your clarity of purpose. It's going to give you that daily discipline. It is going to help you to justify the discomfort that you have. And then it is going to help you to just sustain that over the long haul. So, number one step is to find clarity of purpose. Number two is to embrace the daily discipline. Number three is to embrace the discomfort. Number four is to learn to rest and not quit. And then number five is to continuously reflect, iterate, and learn from what you are doing. And before we go on, actually, I have to warn you that not all situations require us to apply these and not give up because I've just talked about not quitting, but we need to be selective on grit. Otherwise, we risk burning out. You see, for Thomas Edison, those were 1,000 experiments to find a lighting mechanism. And yes, he had all these other experiments in the background, but during the time that he was working on that in his workshop, that was the one thing he was focused on. He applied grit and focus to his craft. So the question therefore comes that when does grit become necessary? One, And then when is it harmful for you to apply grit? Because clearly for him, he was single-mindedly focused on finding this one thing. But we have these goals in our lives that literally you might be applying grit to, but it really doesn't help you. So let's answer the first question. When does grit become necessary when you are working at your craft? Number one is when the only thing in your way is time and effort. When the only thing that you have to accomplish this thing is going to be the time you put in and the effort, you definitely need to apply grit, because that is the only way you're going to get there. The other ways would be if you're leveraging other people's skills, money, capital, things like that. And then number two is when you are on the right path, but it just hasn't clicked yet for you. You see, we are all going to be in these seasons where not everything is so clear, but you know that if you worked at your craft enough, you will definitely get that breakthrough. So, definitely at that point, you need grit. And then when you are building something that takes years, like a business, like a craft, or your body. So, for an athlete, you definitely know you need grit because you're building something that is going to, help you in future, because you are building your body to reach that level of performance that you need. When you are building a business, you're building something that is going to outlast you, something that is going to impact more people than just yourself. When you are building your craft, you are building to deliver. So that is in the context of when you are building something that takes years, you definitely need grit. And an example to illustrate here, and sorry that I'm going to use the one gym example, but I know that is something that we all put in our New Year resolutions every year and then don't go back to, or are not so religious on. So I think it is an example that resonates with a lot of people. So think of building muscle. You have started working out. Grit means that you don't switch gyms every month because you are not seeing the results fast enough. You stay, you adjust, you grow, you work hard, you iterate. People are literally not as bothered about your progress than you think. I mean, like, okay, that came out so jumbled, but what I mean is that people aren't watching you as much as you think, because you might switch gyms just because it's not working and you're afraid that people are going to see that you've been here for 3 months and you're not changing, you're not losing weight. No, most people are not actually worried about you. They're actually worried that you're worried. Sorry, they're actually worried that you see their lack of progress, or that uh they definitely are not going to be so hyper focused on you. So you staying in a place just because the results are not coming in the first 4 6 months, and not choosing the easy way out, in other words, that is great. Same thing applies to relationships, to careers, to startups. But then going back to our two questions of when to use grit and when not to use grit, there are definitely times, like I said, when grit becomes a problem. So let's also talk about those, just so we can paint this full picture that actually is more realistic. I don't want to be another clickbait monger leading you guys down the wrong route of views. So when is grit bad for you? So number one, and not surprising, is if you are using grit to stay in a toxic job, a toxic relationship, a failing project with no feedback loop, or a dead relationship, or you are just not gritty, you are stuck, you know, when the environment itself is just telling you no, when everything around you shouts and screams, that is definitely a sign that you shouldn't apply more than you are already doing to this project. Grit can easily become ego, by the way. We push ourselves through this hard work, and we start priding ourselves for hard work. We can persevere and everything, but you could be persevering at a craft that is simply not yours, and you are ignoring a path that could easily get you there, or a path that is better suited for you. So make sure that you are listening when life tells you to pivot. These are just a few, but trust me when I say that the world tells you, and not just from the voice in your head, because I know that one can be a little bit distracting. But when you listen, when you review, when you learn, you start to see trends and signs. not the noise of AI this or money that, but when you need to make a 20, 30, 10-year decision, make sure that you tune out the noise and listen, you know, take your time and then decide how badly you want it and if you are willing to give up everything else. So just remember that sometimes the strongest move is to simply let go of it and not apply your grit to that specific path, but then choose to optimize and choose the right way. Not because you are weak, but because you are smart. Discernment is key, and grit is just a tool. It's not something that should be a religion. And actually, on this, I have to say that grit is not this whole thing that is perpetuated by this hustle culture. Grit isn't the same as toxic hustle culture that we are generally seeing online. Okay, let's personify it. Grit says that this matters to me, so I will keep showing up even when it's not so glamorous. It's not don't sleep, grind until you have nothing else to do. Even when people are telling you this, do not listen. No, it is being so focused on what you want to do, having that clarity, okay? And then telling yourself that there are going to be hurdles, there are going to be valleys, but I am going to try to endure it. You get it? So, grit is quiet, hustle culture is this loud thing. Grit is more of an internal thing, and then hustle culture is for the gram, let's say. So just don't confuse burnout with this unrealistic ambition. Real grit knows how to pause, like I said, to rest but not quit, and then toxic hustle culture doesn't actually. They say don't rest, don't what, but you need to rest. So just be careful on that one and make sure you know what you are fighting for. Know when to fight harder and then know when to fall back and regroup. Well, I have tried to articulate this whole thing best as I could. I don't feel like I did this episode justice. I feel like I could have done better. But anyway, if this episode hit home for you, please share it with someone that is stuck between quitting, between pushing through. Tag me, message me, or just send me any one of your stories about grit. I want to hear from you and how you just got through it. Anyway, I hope you follow the podcast. Please like, comment, share, and don't forget to review. Otherwise, please always come back to the 5 to 9 job. And from the team and myself, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.